Love is a high-risk behavior.
There's this man I know who had a pretty large friend group. Some of them were close friends and others were regularly close. He was the most generous, though, out of all of the friends, taking them on trips, helping them with life crises, mentoring them on how to help others that had less than them or needed someone to display a level of friendship like he did to them. They would eat together, they would learn together, work together. It was a really edifying scenario for all of them. As they continued to be under his mentorship and learn from this man, they started to really trust his advisory and be able to do the things that he mentioned that they could do. Some of the things were absolutely impossible to accomplish, of course, before they even met him, and they couldn't have even imagined gaining these skills without his help. Of course, a few of them didn't even have the confidence to accomplish the impossible without his very hands-on encouragement. They were beholden to him. And that man couldn't understand why. They couldn't just follow his lead because they had, over all of this time, been with him. He had equipped them with these abilities that he had, but as a friend, he remained faithful to continuing to mentor them until they could. As they continued to travel to these faraway lands, helping people, the man really started to run into some trouble as his social anonymity began to fade. He was known by everyone, and his reputation began to precede him. And a lot of people knew about his dad, but they didn't know that his dad had a son. He had encountered people who outright hated him because he was too bold to help others and claimed that he had these supernatural powers given to him by his dad. It sounds like a superhero film, doesn't it? People didn't want to believe that he could help them the way that his dad had helped them in the past and begin to ostracize him, calling him a liar and all sorts of things. They would test his knowledge and his wisdom on the things of God to see if he was even spiritually and morally upstanding as he claimed to be. It got to the point, though, where the people started to become so divided about this man, and it began to cause him stress, and he knew that it was time to return back to his father's house. After all, he had gone out and mentored and befriended and helped all these people because his father told him to do this work. But his work was coming to an end, and it became increasingly apparent that it was time for him to go home. One evening, after he made his friends aware that he was going to go back to his father's house, they had dinner together like they always did, but this time it was different. He was extra hospitable to his friends, showing them love like they had never experienced before. And one of the friends was really reluctant to take such humble displays of his kinship and of his benevolence. He couldn't stand to see his friend humble himself the way that he did, especially after all of the things that he taught them, all of the things and the ways that he taught them to be great. To see him humble himself to serve them one last time before he left, his friend couldn't deal with it. That man brought it up to his friend that his loyalty was not as strong as he thought it was, and just like all of those out there that were divided about him, he would be also when his loyalty was tested. And his friend, of course, didn't like that he said that, couldn't believe that the man would say such a thing to him because he had been such a great friend to him. He still didn't agree, of course. We move on. Another one of his friends was completely caught off guard and left the dinner early because this man told him to his face that he was going to betray him when the time was come. The man, nonetheless, continued the dinner after he left and took time afterwards to go and talk to his father about coming home. He knew that he had to go home, but he understood that it was going to be a long and troublesome journey because he was going to encounter these people who grew to hate him. Just like he said, before the sun even rose, the first friend denied even knowing him when some people were looking for him. And then the other friend actually had already been plotting against him before they even had the dinner. And he promised to expose his friend on his journey back home to his father. The people who grew to hate him for saying he was the son of the greatest man that they ever knew, captured him and sentenced him to death for false claims. Welcome to the podcast, High Risk for Heartbreak. I am your host, Christina, and I'm so glad you decided to join me today. If you are new here, I pray that you find value in at least one thing that I say today. And to my old and faithful returning crew, you know just how much I appreciate you. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and help me to get to 1,000 subscribers by December 31st. It's a very lofty goal, but we're trucking along, you guys. And if you like this particular episode, let me know by hitting the thumbs up button. It helps to keep me informed about how to better tailor this channel just for you. This will be a 2-part series, so I'm not going to keep you for an hour. So I hope to see you back next week for part 2. The story I just told is one of 2 friends of a friend, a test of their loyalty and belief. One folded under pressure and the other got their friend killed. This story might sound familiar to some of you, and you may resonate very closely with some of the struggles of this man who was a friend and a mentor to many, but was hated for being so. The lesson of each of these individual stories is that some love deeply and others never love at all. It's not always easy to identify when people's love for you, loyalty to you, and faith in you are genuine. Some people are wonderful lovers until their love, which is like a flag post in a plot of land, is challenged to claim and defend you. They cower at the thought of love having to endure anything, especially trial against their livelihood, their personhood, and sometimes their reputation. We learned last season what love is and what love is not, and it is important to always keep this definition close to your heart so that you are loving people rightly, which means people in your life experience correctness, fairness, justice, exactness, appropriateness, and accuracy at the hands of your love. Loving people rightly also requires submission to its making, not manipulating it to appeal to our affections. I have realized that in the last few months, we say love is so many things, sort of tailoring it to what we want it to look like, sound like, and act like, and feel like even. But it actually is not what we say it is most times. It is what it is. And we are the ones who are in constant need of rising to the occasion of it. But it is easier, I guess, to create a standard out of love rather than it be a virtue. And that is why true love is something that we're always seeking. And unfortunately, not even the man in the story received its trueness from all of his friends. Our lives have probably not been very different if we were to look back at them. And okay, maybe your friends didn't kill you, or maybe you haven't been denied, or they haven't been given the opportunity for their loyalty to be challenged. But this story, this episode is prescriptive. That means I'm giving you something that you can use in the future versus just telling you a story. There are some things that we all, as lovers of people, need to know when it comes to evaluating the ones who are already around us, claiming to love us. We need to know how we can move healthily and navigate our relationships with them. And not everyone who calls you sister, friend, my love, are actually honoring their endearment. And the difference makes all the difference to the quality of your life. And one may deny you for fear of reputation, but the other may try to kill it. And so I ask you, who is your Peter and who is your Judas? Let's relate. I read this book a couple of years ago by Dr. Darius Daniels called Relational Intelligence. In this book, he deep dives into the importance of stewarding your relationships, and that comes with putting people in their appropriate places in your life. It was so enlightening to me because I believe I've always cared about managing people's level of closeness in my life, but the perspective that I had was void of 2 things. One, leveraging them from a place of proactivity versus reactivity. I was having relationships in the past many times off of feelings and vibes and commonality versus really seeing the purpose of each of them, no matter how close or how far. People were in my life simply because they felt safe, which is reactivity, versus being in my life because they came safe and because they created safe. And they also required safety and anything in addition to foster the right environment for growth within our relationship. And then the second thing was my perspective of relationships was also void of managing them like I manage other areas of my life, and really understanding that all of my relationships will either add or subtract from me, multiply or divide me. And as strict as it might seem, life is too important and too short to handle our relationships poorly and without intention. So you have to manage your relationships whether you're the managerial type or not. Otherwise, much in your life will be happening to you versus happening through you and those relationships. Life already has its natural opposition. So having someone on your team who is going against your best interests is really detrimental to how far you are going to end up. So how do you identify who is for you and who is against you? How do you manage the people who are already in your life that may fit either of those categories of Peter or Judas? The truth is, everyone, regardless of where they fall, will break your heart. And my therapist last season spoke about these small paper cuts in relationships that eventually lead to large wounds that seem to appear out of nowhere. But we should not be surprised anymore about this. But for even myself, it's surprising the things that people who are in my life are capable of saying or doing to me, and vice versa, right? And aside though, I will say is abuse of any kind is not a workable offense. Let me be on the record saying that. While none of us are Jesus and able to know how these intimate relationships are going to actually carry out like he did, we can use that descriptive nature of the story to recognize characters of these two types of friends, and then use it to prescriptively govern and vet our relationships. So let's do a breakdown of each of these in this two-part series on recognizing who in your life is a Peter and who is a Judas. I think I've talked enough. Peter, originally named Simon, called Peter Petros by Jesus, meaning rock or stone. Simon Peter had a moment of genuine loyalty and belief about who Jesus was, calling him the Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus had asked him and the other disciples who the people of the world were saying he was. Then Jesus asked them the all-time important question I think everyone should ask important people in their life is, who do you say I am? This is significant because who the people you love say you are in your absence matters. And what they say about you in your absence is going to become an addition to other people's minds about who you are, right? It may not be accurate, but it doesn't matter. It's what they are believing about you. And this is why it's so important to love people properly, not so that they can go run and tell it, but when they are being questioned and they do tell it, their truth and your truth match. Nevertheless, in this particular moment of Jesus questioning the disciples, Jesus saw Peter's authentic affection and belief in him, and he knew it was the belief that would build the confessions of many, right, of the church. So what are they saying about you? The people you are in relationship with, are they saying things about you, despite what everyone else is saying, that build you up, or are they creating blocks for you? When others seek to tear you down, are they building up your name because you have a genuine encounter with them? Are they tarnishing your reputation behind your back, though, instead? A Peter-like person is going to build you. They are going to build out of identity and earnest and with sincerity. They're going to edify you. They're going to love you. They're going to confess honestly about you and to you. They are going to be authentic in their interactions, not manipulating you or others or the truth. They will have belief in the things that you set out to do, pursue, support, love, and being the rock of your reputation so that you can build your team and carry out your mission. Other characteristics of Peter that I would like to get to before we head out of here is a Peter-like person that you might find in your relationships are outspoken. They will talk their thoughts, their opinions, and their findings to you and about you. And they will also be upfront or genuine about themselves. With a Peter-like relationship, you shouldn't have to probe them like you're giving an endoscopy, okay? Now, there is a sensitivity that I think is needed for every personality type that I think I need to do a podcast on, because managing people's personalities should not, in my opinion, be an approach as a one-size-fits-all. If you are interested, though, in me giving this take, remind me in the comments, please, below. Probing people's hearts is not really up to us, though. We don't really have that range or jurisdiction where our hearts are clean enough to even do so. We are to examine the fruits of their heart. That's what we're to do. So what is flowing and blooming from them? That's what we examine. Being outspoken will, of course, deliver more authentic messages about a person, especially if they don't have much of a bridle on their tongue. But please don't hide. Tell me what you think. Be outspoken. That is a Peter-like quality. Next, another Peter-like person is excitable. They are joyful in their soul. This one is really important, I think, too, because having a joyful loyalist is going to make each day better than it actually seems, especially on the down days. This attribute, though, can be harmful, I think, to the mission of the team because sometimes it does lack focus on the severity of the situation at hand and can seem a bit escapist. However, in its true essence, it does add texture and hope to an otherwise hopeless place. We need people in our lives with this attribute. Are they headstrong? Peter was mentioned a time or two telling Jesus what to do. He was even rebuked by Jesus, though, because he was wrong. Having a relationship with a headstrong person can be such a delicate give or take. It can be off-putting. Don't ask my friends and family because they might tell you this is me. This one might seem like the first one of being outspoken, but it's different than being a forthright communicator. Being headstrong means that you are set. You are set in your opinions, and often it might be hard to get you to come up out of them, right? Without a little bit of humbling. But that headstrongness is the same attribute that will be quick to stand against injustice towards you and your character, not folding easily. Although Peter did have a major lapse moment that Jesus told him he would, which really to me seemed more of like an oddity or a lapse of judgment in his character. So everything, of course, is not set in stone. We do have these peculiarities about us, that these moments that might bring out certain things that cause heartbreak and offense, and it occurs within our relationship, but we have to recognize if it's a repeated behavior or a lapse in judgment, right? You got to pay attention to that and then filter accordingly, because every wrong is not a wrong worth discarding someone over. It's so good to practice knowing how to manage a relationship with someone who is headstrong. And maybe that person is you, like me. There are a few more that I can say, but we will end with this one, and it kind of just bridges from the last one. Is this person knee-jerk? Is there a quality about their character that is automatic and not necessarily thoughtful? A knee-jerk person can be often weak in the flesh while strong in the spirit. And that is the duality that I have witnessed in a lot of people, actually. This type of character trait that a person, in my opinion, again, displays this sort of battle of like humanity and spirit. And there's this battle because, as my therapist would say, we are disjointed. We are always trying to find our way back to God. And some call that nirvana, they call it peace or enlightenment. But the truth is, God is who we are trying to find our way back to. So a Peter-like person can be impulsive and appeal a lot more to their earthly desires at points and times in their life than the overall good for the team in this sort of automatic type way, right? It's a knee-jerk reaction. It's a very strong compass that they have, though otherwise, towards God in their spirit. And so that's what I love about this, because, we see this all the time where people have this duality and we think they need to be just one way all the time. And it's just not how we are built. We're just not built that way. They may be prone to protect themselves first, and we never know why people are like that. And like Peter denying Jesus 3 times, he didn't directly harm Jesus, but his denial of knowing him is a true display of a character opportunity to line up his spirit with his soul. The soul is the mind, will, imagination, emotion, and affections, as you guys know, and is where our humanity comes from. That soul, though, is disjointed from the spirit and is constantly trying to find its way back to connection. And we literally have to fight for that every single day. Hence why we even have podcasts and discussions exactly like this. We are searching to be less knee-jerk and more thoughtful, more at peace. And it can be a rocky situation with people that we love when we are knee-jerk. Sometimes people we are in a relationship with lean too heavily into this part of themselves, causing them to be knee-jerk or instinctual and making choices that are too automatic and not thoughtful enough. But having said all of this, the character traits of a Peter, both negative and positive, I couple together for a reason. There is always this duality. There's always a blessing to the lesson, right? There is black and there is white. There is left and there is right. There is up and down. There's wet and dry, hot and cold. And not that there isn't a spectrum of in between for many of those things. There are these extremes, though, these polar opposite extremes, which we call this duality. And that is the polar opposites that we see displayed in our humanness sometimes. And it takes certain events to bring that out. However, that spectrum, That is where our relationships ebb and they flow. They ebb and flow on this spectrum. And we get to make a choice of what type of people just might be too extreme for us. Now, none of us are Jesus. So a person like Peter may send you over the edge. You may not be able to call him a rock through which you can build your things. Peter may be edging a little too on the extreme for you, but truthfully, you may be Peter. And I don't think when you examine yourself, you would call yourself disposable because of that. This is another podcast topic, of course, that I will be addressing in this season, which is the lack of respect for the spectrum of our humanity, and that we view these paper cuts as unworkable offenses, thus making people that we are in relationship with disposable. We live in a highly overexposed society that has developed us to believe people who aren't perfectly crafted to our affections as disposable. It is arrogant and it is damaging to the souls of people, and I hate it. And I truly can say I hate it. I don't say I hate a lot of things, but I do hate that. Not even Jesus disposed of Peter. Rather, he saw value in the most important things: his belief, his loyalty, and confession of who Jesus was. Who do you say I am? This is such an important question, not for vanity, but for viability. Are your relationships viable? Are they workable? Can they live? Are they able to endure the quirks of a character like Peter? In closing, I want to say this. This was long, but I hope it was strong. I too have needed to take a closer look at how I manage my relationships and how I assess if I'm loving them with the same enduring power that true love leads us to have. I hope you're doing that too, especially after this message. I hope that this was edifying and thought-provoking, and if nothing else, a tool to help you manage your heartbreaks. We are responsible before anyone else to manage our heartbreaks and to mitigate the unnecessary ones. I thank you for loving yourself first, so you can then go and love your neighbor. Until next time.
Why don't you stay a little longer? You like what you like, right? Subscribe to the channel so we can spend a little more time together, and maybe comment your thoughts because I care what you're thinking. Love is the risk and the reward.